You probably think that once you pay for something, the transaction is finished. You probably think that when your card is approved, your money is gone and the deal is done. You probably believe that once the receipt prints, nobody can touch that payment again. That belief is wrong. It has never been true. And today, it is more false than ever. Because in the modern financial system, no payment is final. Every transaction you make lives inside a system that can be rewritten, reversed, canceled, erased, days later, weeks later, sometimes months later, without your permission, without your knowledge, without any warning. Most people never realize this until it happens to them. Until one morning, they check their account, and the money is gone. Not because they spent it, because someone else decided that payment should never have existed, and the system agreed. This power is called chargeback authority, and it is one of the most important tools banks and payment networks have. But almost nobody understands how deep it really goes. Let us go back in time. Before plastic cards, before apps, before digital payments. In the early 1900s, payments were simple. If you handed someone cash, it was over. If you wrote a check and it cleared, it was final. If you paid in gold or silver, nobody could reverse it. Ownership had changed hands instantly. No middleman could rewrite history. No central system could undo the deal. That world no longer exists. Everything changed in the 1950s. That is when credit cards began to spread in America. Diners Club in 1950, Bank AmeriCard in 1958, which later became Visa, MasterCharge in 1966, which became MasterCard. These cards introduced something new, a third party, the bank. Suddenly, payments were no longer between two people. They were between you, the merchant, and the financial system. And that system kept records. Those records could be edited. In the 1970s, fraud exploded. People disputed charges. Stolen cards were used. Scams increased. Banks needed protection. So they created the modern chargeback system, a mechanism that allowed transactions to be reversed after the fact. At first, it was meant for extreme cases, clear fraud, clear theft, clear mistakes, but over time it expanded. By the 1990s, chargebacks were fully integrated into Visa and MasterCard networks. Every transaction you made came with an invisible delay, a probation period, a window where it could be undone. Today, that window is massive, in many cases up to 180 days, 6 months, half a year. Think about that. You can buy something today. The merchant can deliver it, they can pay employees, they can pay suppliers, they can pay rent. And months later, the system can erase the payment, as if it never happened. This is not theory, this happens every day. In 2010, during the rise of online commerce, chargeback fraud exploded. People would buy products, receive them, then dispute the charge, claiming fraud, claiming they never received it, claiming unauthorized use. Banks often sided with customers. Merchants lost billions. In 2019 alone, global chargeback losses exceeded $31 billion. By 2023, it passed $100 billion, not from criminals only, from regular people who learned how to game the system, because the system is designed to protect the cardholder first. Not the seller, not the merchant, not the business. The person holding the card has the ultimate power, or so it appears, but even that is an illusion, because the cardholder is not in control either. The bank is, the network is, the algorithm is. Every transaction you make goes through layers. Your bank, the merchant bank, Visa or MasterCard, payment processors, fraud detection systems, risk scoring engines, monitoring software. Each layer keeps a copy. Each layer can raise a flag. Each layer can trigger a reversal. You never see this, you never approve it. It happens in the background, silently, automatically. In 2008, during the financial crisis, banks quietly increased reversals. When liquidity was tight, when risk was high, when trust collapsed. Payments were reversed more aggressively, accounts were frozen more easily, disputes were approved faster. Why? Because banks were protecting themselves, not you. The same happened during COVID in 2020. Online fraud surged, disputes surged, banks tightened controls. Thousands of small businesses lost payments retroactively. Restaurants, gyms, coaches, consultants, creators. Their money vanished weeks later. No appeal, no explanation, no negotiation, just gone. And this system has only grown stronger since, with artificial intelligence, with real-time monitoring, with behavioral analysis, with transaction profiling. Today, your payment is judged long after you make it. Your location, your spending history, your device, your IP address, your merchant category, your past disputes, your political donations, your subscriptions, your travel patterns. Everything feeds the model, and that model decides, was this payment acceptable? Was this risky? Was this allowed? Was this compliant? If the answer changes later, the system corrects it by reversing it, by pulling the money back, by rewriting the past. You live in a world where financial history is editable, where ownership is temporary, where possession does not mean control, where your money is never truly settled. And most people have no idea. They think payment equals freedom. They think spending equals power. They think ownership equals safety. They are wrong. Because the system is built in an undo button, and it is not yours. It belongs to them. Most people think chargebacks happen only when someone steals a card. They think it is rare. They think it is a safety feature. They think it protects honest people. That is what banks want you to believe. In reality, chargebacks have become a weapon, a silent weapon, used by systems, used by algorithms, used by institutions, and sometimes used against you. Let us talk about what actually happens after you swipe your card. The moment your payment is approved, it enters a monitoring phase. It is watched, it is tracked, it is analyzed every hour, every day, for months. The system keeps asking one question: is this transaction still acceptable? Not when you made it, now, later, in the future. Because risk changes, context changes, politics change, economics change. And when that happens, past payments get reevaluated. In 2013, PayPal quietly changed its dispute policy. Suddenly, sellers could lose money even after proving delivery. Tracking was no longer enough. Signatures were no longer enough. The system decided what was fair. Not evidence, not logic, not reality, the system. Thousands of sellers were wiped out, forums filled with stories. People lost months of income overnight because a buyer clicked one button, dispute, and the algorithm sided with them. In 2017, Uber drivers began reporting mass reversals. Riders would complain weeks later, claiming fake issues, claiming unsafe rides, claiming fraud. Uber refunded them and pulled the money from drivers who already spent it, drivers who already paid bills, drivers who already moved on. The money vanished. No hearing, no appeal, no discussion. In 2020, during lockdowns, fitness studios collapsed. People canceled memberships, then disputed old charges. Banks approved it. Gyms lost 6 months of revenue in weeks. Some never recovered. This was not accidental. This is how the system is designed. Because chargebacks are not about fairness. They are about liability. Banks want zero risk. They want no responsibility. So they shift the risk downward. Onto merchants, onto workers, onto small businesses, onto individuals, never onto themselves. If a dispute happens, someone must lose. And it will never be the bank. It will be you, or the person you paid. Now, let us talk about algorithms, because today humans do not decide most reversals. Machines do. In 2014, Visa launched Advanced Authorization, an artificial intelligence system. It evaluates every transaction in milliseconds, using thousands of variables. MasterCard followed with Decision Intelligence. American Express built its own models. These systems score your payment before, during, and after. If the score changes later, action is taken. What changes the score? Maybe you traveled. Maybe you changed jobs. Maybe you used a VPN. Maybe you donated to the wrong organization. Maybe your spending pattern shifted. Maybe your industry became risky. Maybe inflation spiked. Maybe markets crashed. Maybe a war started. Maybe regulations changed. Your payment is never frozen in time. It is always being judged. In 2001, after September 11th, banks retroactively reviewed transactions. Anything tied to certain regions, certain charities, certain names, certain patterns. Accounts were frozen, payments reversed, assets seized, with no court order, with no warning. In 2008, after Lehman collapsed, banks increased reversals on investment services. People who paid advisors, traders, funds, saw payments pulled back because counterparty risk increased. In 2022, after sanctions on Russia, thousands of payments were frozen, even unrelated ones. People who bought digital products, subscriptions, courses, lost access, and lost money because the system flagged geography, not behavior. Today, social risk is added, environmental risk, political risk, reputation risk. Everything matters if a merchant becomes controversial. Payments to them become unstable if a platform is criticized. Transactions get reviewed. If a topic becomes sensitive, money stops flowing. This is soft censorship through finance. No ban, no announcement, just reversals, just friction, just delays, just denials. Now let us talk about you, because this is not only about merchants. It affects you directly. If you dispute too often, your risk score rises. If you travel too much, your risk score rises. If you use crypto, your risk score rises. If you use foreign exchanges, your risk score rises. If you subscribe to controversial platforms, your risk score rises. If your risk score rises enough, banks begin to preemptively reverse. They cancel before asking. They deny before checking. They lock before explaining. In 2019, Chase closed thousands of accounts without explanation. No fraud, no crime, just risk models. People lost access to funds, payments reversed, bills failed, credit scores collapsed, lives were disrupted. No appeal, because machines decided you are risky, you are unstable, you are expensive, and the system removed you quietly. Now understand something important. Chargebacks are not about the past. They are about control. They are a lever. They are a pressure point. They are a way to enforce compliance without courts, without police, without headlines. If you stay inside the rules, your money flows. If you drift outside, it disappears, and nobody tells you why. Now, let us talk about where this system is going, because chargebacks today are only the beginning. They are a test, a prototype, a preview of something much larger. In the past, reversing money was difficult. It required paperwork. It required human review. It required legal authority. It required time. That friction protected people. It created limits. It forced accountability. But digital finance removed friction. And when friction disappears, power concentrates. Today, reversals can happen in seconds. Tomorrow, they will happen automatically, without any human involved, without any notification, without any explanation. Central banks are already building this future. In 2020, China expanded its digital yuan. Every transaction is programmable. Every payment can include conditions: where it can be spent, when it can be spent, how long it remains valid, whether it can be refunded, whether it can be reversed. In 2021, the European Central Bank began testing digital euro rules. They openly discussed transaction controls, spending limits, expiration dates, behavior filters. In 2022, the Bank for International Settlements published reports on programmable money. They called it efficiency. They called it stability. They called it safety. But what it really means is this: money becomes permission, not ownership, not possession, permission. When money is programmable, reversal is no longer an exception. It becomes normal. It becomes default. The system decides continuously whether you deserve to keep what you paid. In 2020, during pandemic relief programs, governments froze benefit cards. If people spent money on certain products, alcohol, travel, electronics, funds were clawed back automatically. In 2021, welfare programs in Australia tested spending restrictions. Certain stores were blocked, certain purchases denied. The system enforced morality, not law, morality coded by institutions. In 2023, Canada froze bank accounts of protesters, without court orders, without convictions, without trials, payments reversed, access removed, all legal, all digital, all instant. No guns, no arrests, just buttons. Now imagine that power applied everywhere. Subscriptions, rent, healthcare, education, transportation, energy, food, every transaction, every day. All monitored, all reversible, all conditional. This is where finance becomes governance. Banks become regulators, algorithms become judges, payment systems become enforcement tools. And most people will not notice, because it will happen slowly, quietly, conveniently, one feature at a time. First, faster refunds, then smarter security, then predictive fraud, then behavioral scoring, then conditional approvals, then automatic reversals, then spending permissions, then restrictions, then expiration, then social compliance. And by the time people realize what happened, it will be permanent, because once money becomes programmable, it never goes back, just like surveillance, just like social media, just like digital identity. Once built, it only expands, never shrinks. And the most dangerous part is this: you are being trained to accept it. Every time you click, dispute. Every time you request reversal. Every time you accept frozen funds. Every time you accept blocked payments. Every time you accept delayed access. You normalize control. You internalize dependency. You adapt to instability. You learn to live with uncertainty, until uncertainty becomes normal. In the Roman Empire, currency debasement trained citizens to accept inflation. In Weimar Germany, hyperinflation trained people to distrust savings. In Argentina, repeated freezes trained citizens to hold dollars. In Lebanon, banking collapse trained people to avoid banks. Every system collapse reshapes behavior. Today, chargebacks are reshaping expectations. People no longer expect money to be final. They expect it to be temporary, conditional, fragile, and that changes everything. It changes how people work, how people save, how people invest, how people plan, how people trust. When money is unstable, society becomes unstable. Because money is memory, it is stored effort, it is delayed life, it is future security. When that memory can be erased, so can your future. And here's the truth nobody tells you. The system does not want you financially independent. It wants you dependent, predictable, traceable, manageable, reversible. Because independent people are hard to control, dependent people are easy. If your money can be taken back, you think twice before speaking, before donating, before organizing, before dissenting, before experimenting, before leaving, before resisting. Control does not need violence. It needs leverage. And money is the strongest leverage ever invented. That is why chargebacks exist. Not to protect you, to train you, to condition you, to prepare you for a world where nothing is truly yours, not even what you already paid for. If you want to understand how this system really works, If you want to stay ahead of where it is going, if you want to see the hidden structures before they become normal, then make sure you are subscribed. Because this channel is about decoding power before it becomes invisible. And once it is invisible, it is too late.